Okay, welcome, honorable samurai and coaches. That's another issue of Coaching Dojo Live. I didn't have anyone to coach this week. I'm going to put out a post soon about coaching with people, and so if you'd like to do a live session with me. But I've had this idea for a little while about doing kind of a series on the Prosperous Coach Decoded. In my tradition, in the Zen tradition, often teachers give Dharma talks. And what they do is they read from a particular text and they sort of offer their interpretation of that text. So it's pretty common, and I listen to a lot of Dharma talks from that way. And so I had this sort of idea that what if I started doing Dharma talks on the Prosperous Coach? I mean, if there's a text out there that gets recommended more than the Prosperous Coach, I don't know what it is. And what Rich and Steve created is a book that really inspires a lot of people to coaching. It's a wonderful book. It incredibly inspired me as a coach. And it's got some pieces that are missing or problems. And so I'm going to just start offering this. Maybe I'll do the whole book. Maybe I won't. I'm not quite ready to make a commitment, but I'm going to try it today and see how it goes. And I did my standard Zen thing. So I lit some incense and a candle back there. That's what we typically do during a Dharma talk. So I'm going to start off just by reading the text of the first chapter. Not the whole text. There's a part that's an introduction to the book. I'm going to skip that part. But I'm just going to start out by reading the first part. And this is by Rich. And the chapter's called, Why Isn't This Working? It was 7 a.m. It was gray and cloudy outside, and it felt almost gray and cloudy in my room as I hunched over my computer, tired and frustrated. I had been working so hard over the past year to build my skills as a coach. I had done training after training. I knew my coach was powerful. Yet as I peered at my bank website in the early morning light, there was no arguing with the cold, hard facts of the numbers. I had almost no money left in my account. What I wanted to scream was, why isn't this working? And I was angry because I'd just received a clear no to a bold request I'd sent to a coach named Steve Chandler. You see, Steve had a reputation for helping coaches become prosperous. Some of the most successful and world-class coaches I knew had trained with him. So I'd emailed Steve with an extraordinary offer. I had written, Steve, I cannot afford to attend your coaching prosperity school, but if you let me attend for free, I'll pay you double by the end of the program. Excited by my offer, I was crestfallen to receive his reply. Rich, I want you to be the coach who can create the money first. My chest was constricted and my breathing short, because signing up for Steve's school would drain the very last of my savings. And yet a sensation deep inside me knew, you've got to do this. I wrote the check then and there and walked to the mailbox with my heart beating fast in my chest. I wanted to commit. I wanted to play full out for the first time in my life. I dropped my check in the mail, and a couple of weeks later, I met Steve in person for the first time as I became a member of his coaching prosperity school. The numbers don't lie. It was just 2 months later when I realized I'd already made 10 times my investment in my own coaching. For the first time in my coaching life, I had found a way to look into the eyes of a potential client and have them smile as they said the magic words, how do I pay you? As I write these words today, I had a sense of deep inner confidence about my ability to create prosperity as a coach. I no longer use my bank account as a way to make myself feel bad or good, and I know how to create the income and clients to support a lifestyle I love. I attended the Coaching Prosperity School 4 times in total. I eventually became a faculty member and began to lead sessions alongside Steve. I had learned to thrive as a coach, and in this book, alongside my coach and mentor, and now good friend, Steve and I get to share our world with you. A coach once asked me, what's the secret to being an extraordinary coach? Extraordinary clients, I replied. That's easy to say, he retorted, but how do you get extraordinary clients? What I said to him is that a coach is what I will now say to you. Be fearless in your coaching and be fearless in how you create clients. Show your clients what they cannot see. Say to your clients what no one else would dare to say, and you will have all the clients you desire. All right. So that is the first chapter of The Prosperous Coach. So I just want to talk a little bit about, and again, I just really want to honor the work that Rich and Steve did. It's an incredible book, incredibly inspiring. There's a lot in this chapter, even though it's an introductory chapter, there's a lot in it, and it provides some really incredible information. The first thing I really loved about this chapter of the book is that it really captured this very normal experience, which is this confusion that often comes over coaches about why they aren't more successful. I know this is true of coaches who are at the very beginning of their career. I know coaches who charge $50,000 a year that sort of have this question about where's my next client coming from. It's a question that I face from time to time. Sometimes I feel super confident and everything's fine. And I'm very like, yes, I'm going to make a ton of money as a coach and this is awesome. And sometimes I have that feeling of like, why am I not more successful? And I'll look at other coaches who I don't consider to be, quote, as good as me, and sort of like, why am I not doing something? So if you're a coach out there and you're in this process of developing yourself as a coach and mastering what it means to be a coach, it is completely normal and appropriate for you to feel sometimes this question of why isn't this working? And why isn't this working on multiple different levels? Like, why can't you get any clients, right? Why aren't you making more money? Why can't you charge as much as this person? Why did that client choose this coach instead of you? Why aren't you getting referrals? This question, this confusion of why isn't this working, is a question that comes up a lot. What's interesting as well, and Rich does such a beautiful job describing this, is the despair that comes along with that. There's a feeling of like, this isn't working because there's something wrong with me. And that's sort of hidden in the layer underneath there. Right? He does a beautiful job of creating this possibility, but he doesn't fully draw out this sort of like, there's a real feeling of like, there's something wrong with me, right? I'm doing all the right things, but there's something wrong with me. And so that's the place I just love for you to like look and invite and explore is like, what is sort of behind this, why isn't this working? And the despair and almost like the victimization that occurs when you get there. It has a lot in comparison or a lot in common with the scarcity mindset that I see in a lot of coaches, that I see in myself. I see in new coaches, see in really successful coaches, this sort of fear that things are not going to work out because there's something wrong with them. And looking at and working on that as a fundamental thing is super important, right? Matters a lot. And so if you find that you have this fear, this despair, the first place I would invite you to practice is to move away from this question of why isn't this working to what could I be doing differently or how can I make this work, right? It moves you from a place of despair to a place of possibility. And really to get into practice, right? So like that's the, and I'll talk a little bit about this other thing that he talks about here, which is commitment, but to get into practice or to take a leap of faith and to say, okay, I'm going to try something to get this to work. Because we can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's wrong with us, what we're doing wrong without getting into the practice of trying new things. And that will often keep coaches trapped, right? So this is a question I hear from a lot of coaches, like, well, I don't know where to find clients and I don't know where to have conversations. And I'll be asked them like, okay, well, what are you trying? What are you doing? And I would say 9 times out of 10, thanks Ryan for the comment. I appreciate it. Good to see you, brother. 9 times out of 10, I would say that the main thing is that they aren't trying anything. They aren't doing anything. They aren't making any attempt. They aren't being effective in any particular way, right? They're just sort of wandering around or scrambling around in this despair, right? And so in the chapter, Rich does this really incredible thing. He literally is at the bottom of his bank account, and he has to take a leap of faith. He has a gut instinct that this will help, right? And he follows that leap of faith. But what he doesn't really talk about in the book, and he talks about it very briefly, he takes to school 4 times, is he really follows through on that commitment, right? And so it's important to understand that it's not just about taking a leap of faith, but it's about sort of following through that commitment. So if you're kind of stuck in this place of despair, which Rich describes really well, and he does point to this way out, which is to make a commitment, to get into action, to take a leap of faith and do something differently. The second part of this, which is sort of the tag on and kind of the introduction to the book, is this idea about fearless coaching. This is another thing I think the chapter really talks about well, and he gets to this deeper into the text later on. But this idea that a lot of coaches, and I see this in the dojo a bunch, a lot of coaches know the questions they're supposed to ask, know what they're supposed to do, but they're afraid. They're afraid to ask the question. They're uncertain about themselves. It kind of goes back to this like, what's wrong with me thing. And instead of being in action around that, instead of being effective with that, instead of presenting them forward, they hold back their insight and their intuition. And so Rich is sort of pointing to us that this is one of the paths out, right? To be fearless in the way you step forward with your commitment, to be fearless in the way that you coach your clients, and to be willing to trust yourself in the face of evidence that things are not going to work. And I would say that's a pretty integral part of what it means to be a successful coach, is a willingness to declare and stand and step forward and say, I'm going to try, I'm going to do something new in the face of a lot of your doubts and fears telling you it's not going to work. Okay. So we want to be successful. And in order to do that, we have to make some level of investment or commitment in ourselves. And often we want to be ready first. And so Rich really points to like, don't wait to be ready, go ahead and make that stand. And of course, there are some things that, well, actually, I want to talk about that a bit more. There is this illusion that there is a place from which, if we're ready and we make a commitment, will prevent or limit the possibility of bad things happening. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like there's some truth to that. Like, you know, the other day I went on a hike with a friend and I thought we were just going to hike for a couple miles. We ended up hiking 10 miles and I didn't bring my water with me, right? So I thought about it. I had a bag with water and I was like, oh, I could bring this bag with me. And I was like, I'm not going to bring the bag with me. It'll be fine. And so I decided not to bring water with me. So there's a mindset of like, oh, right, I should always, and I typically just always bring water with me on a hike, even when I'm just hiking a mile, because I just never know. And I sort of went against that instinct. And then I was out there on a hike, you know, it was fine. I actually didn't get super thirsty or dehydrated. It wasn't a super hot day. So it worked out fine that time. But there's been other times where I've sort of gone off half-cocked and then not really been ready for what happened. So this idea of being ready is not a bad idea, right? We, you know, make sure we have our grocery bags in the car. We go to the grocery store. People make sure they like have a mask, right? If you're sick or if something going on, you have to interact with the public in a particular way. We make sure that we, you know, make a list of things we need before a trip so that we don't miss anything when we go. So this idea of being ready makes a lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense to do it. And at the same time, there's an illusion that being ready, that we can know what ready really is for something that we haven't done before. And especially true when it comes to doing something like building a coaching business. So I see a lot of coaches who are endlessly preparing to go do the thing, which is sort of start the coaching business. And the problem is that while you can prepare a little bit, right, and it's helpful to do some preparation, most people, like, first of all, you're also already on the trip and preparing. So that's the first thing, right? Like it would be one thing if you were like, okay, I have a job and I'm going to prepare to be a coach. So I'm going to take a training program and I'm learn about sales, right? Which are the two things. And I might do some practice to develop my abilities as a coach. And then I'm going to leave my job and become a coach. But for most coaches, like you're already on the trip, right? So you've already left your job. You've already started your business. So you're already there. Like you're already doing it. You're already walking. So the idea that you need to prepare, sort of like, you know, you're on the hike, you can't go back to the car and get water, and you're sort of like wandering around the beginning of the path, starving and dying of thirst, right? And trying to get ready to be on the hike. And I'm like, dude, you're already on the hike. So that's the first place. Like you're already on the hike, right? So getting ready now doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't mean you can't learn along the way. Doesn't mean you can't acquire skills and abilities, but the important thing is you're doing it on the way. You're actively practicing, continuing to develop yourself as a coach, going out and getting clients and learning as you do that, not like learning so that you can do it, because you're already on the journey. And the second thing is that like the idea of being ready is very closely tied to this idea of preventing the breakdown. So often we want to be ready so that we can go out and avoid getting on a conversation and just doing a bad job as a coach, or getting on a conversation and proposing and having the client say no, or getting on the conversation and just doing a really bad job explaining what coaching looks like, or saying a high number and having the person go, oh, that's crazy, I'm never going to pay you that, right? So we're trying to avoid or prevent all of those breakdowns or experiences or tragedies, you know, so we can protect our apparently fragile egos, even though most people's egos actually aren't that fragile. We're doing all this stuff to protect ourselves, when in reality, right, if we just went out and did that stuff and we're willing to be with the breakdown, to be with the suffering, to be with the pain of that, to get the no, to hear someone be really appalled, well, we realized pretty quickly that we could survive that, right? But instead, we don't want any of that stuff to happen. So we have this illusion, if I get my marketing right and get my email list right, and if I can learn sales the right way, then that won't happen to me. And that is not my experience of growing a coaching business. And that is not my experience of being a coach. You know, often my experience of being a coach is you take a big swing and you just miss. You get it wrong. You get it wrong because your own stuff. You get it wrong because the client's not open to seeing it, which might not be wrong. Like you just miss the swing, right? That the ball isn't there and it doesn't connect. It doesn't connect with what you're offering. And so if you're not willing to miss, then you're not really going to swing. And so you have to be willing to miss in order to swing. You got to swing, maybe not for home runs, right? A lot of coaches just swing for home runs, but at least a base hit. But if you don't swing for that base hit, if you don't make an attempt, you don't go after it, you're never going to learn what it means to hit the ball, and you're never going to learn what it means to miss the ball and adapt and develop that ability. So a lot of this getting ready to do stuff as a coach is really just a bunch of fear about failing, about facing setbacks, and it's not super helpful. And this is a bit of the myth of the prosperous coach that I don't love, which is sort of like, you can get to this place where coaching so amazing that you won't experience this stuff. And I just don't know coaches who are successful who do that. I know coaches who experience it less, who handle it better, but I don't know coaches who are taking swings that don't miss sometimes, don't get it wrong, don't get caught in their own stuff, don't make mistakes, don't get no's. In fact, most of the coaches I know who are really up to a big game, fail quite spectacularly. And so getting used to failure, learning that you can survive it, trying stuff with clients, not doing it right, being willing to clean up and be responsible for that stuff, that's really all an integral part of both being a masterful as well as a prosperous coach. Thank you, Joey. Thank you for your amen. I appreciate it. I'm not sure what you're saying amen about, but I appreciate it. Thanks for rocking it. So I would just really encourage you to let go of being ready, being willing to make a commitment to yourself as a coach, being willing to not give yourself a way out, but just go out and start trying it, right? I was in a group early on with Jason Goldberg, who's an incredible coach, definitely an incredible teacher of the Prosperous Coach. And early on, I created a lot more success than my peers. And the biggest difference was I simply just went out and tried. He would tell me to do stuff and I would just do it. Right? There wasn't a piece of advice that I wouldn't take. I would just give stuff a shot and see how it goes. And so that's, again, what I would recommend is you just go out and give it a shot, right? Stop waiting to be ready. Stop waiting to take another training program. Stop waiting to do sales. Take the training programs, take sales courses, work with coaches, but go out and be in action. There's something about that moment. I love the story he talks about, literally it's his last savings account, money, his check, and he puts it in the mail and he makes the commitment. And it's just a really powerful leap of faith. And on some level, the biggest and most powerful transformations we can make in lives as coaches and as human beings is to take these leaps of faith and just make a commitment. So really being willing to be a stand for your client and being a stand for the commitment they're making, and then also being a stand for your commitment. So those are the things I love about this chapter. They're great. They're incredible. I think they make incredible points that continue to make throughout the rest of the book, and points that are really valuable for you as coaches. And there's some things that it misses. This isn't necessarily a criticism. I think anytime you write something that's succinct, you're going to miss things. But here are the things that I sort of seen that it misses, that I think are important for coaches to understand. So first of all, to understand the context the book was written in and where the coaching business was at that point. So we're still a relatively new industry in the grand world of industries. There's still a little bit level of the Wild Westness there. And at the same time, at the end of the story, Rich takes a check and puts it in the mail. So just think about the time period where that was a thing that you did in the world, put a check in the mail to someone. Now, people still send checks, right? I have clients that send me checks, but now we exist in a world of Venmo and PayPal and very Stripe, and very rarely we send a check to pay for a program. And so just to give you some context, that's how much the coaching industry has changed. That's how much our world has changed, and our world has definitely gone through incredible changes. But back at the time this book was written, coaching buyers were a lot less savvy. Coaching was a lot less known as a particular industry. And the way that you got clients was different, right? So I think a lot of the things the book eschews, like marketing, like social media, are problematic. I think those things can be important and helpful. The core of the book, which sort of talks a lot about the importance of building relationships, is true, but the level of sophistication of the buyers has changed a lot. And so understand that while the book is really amazing and speaks to some of these core principles, the coaching industry has changed. And not that you should toss it all out, but just understand how much the industry has changed, how much more wise the consumers are, how many more coaches there are. There are a lot more coaches, how many more big players are in the space. So understand that as you read or work through the Prosperous Coach, while the fundamental principles are there, you may have to adapt some of the principles that matter. So just keep that in mind. Second thing, not all investments make a difference. Part of the challenge of the world that we live in now is that it's very hard to tell who is really good at helping people, who has a lot of integrity, who is a really potent, powerful person, and who is just like, pretending to be a great coach. It's very difficult to tell. Like on Facebook, everything looks the same, right? The New York Times, a very reputable news source, the CDC, Johns Hopkins University can make a graphic that looks just the same as somebody else. And so there is this idea embedded in this book, and there's also this idea embedded in the coaching industry that like the key to being super successful is to make a huge investment, spend all of your money, and it'll be really transformative. That can be true, and I've made really big investments that had a really big impact on myself and my business. They're way outside my comfort zone and gone into debt. But I see a lot of coaches doing this thing where they're basically just throwing money at a problem. Right? I'll hire this really expensive coach, and they're super fancy and shiny, and they make a bunch of money, and they're going to teach me all this stuff. One, they haven't established themselves in their reality and their depth out themselves as coaches, and they haven't really checked with or felt the experience or the integrity in that person's being in the way that I think is really important to do as a coach. And so be really clear that the solution to all coaching problems isn't just to pay an expensive coach a lot of money. Now, having said that, making big investments is awesome. I remember when I hired my first coach for $3,000 a month. I remember taking out a loan to pay $25,000 to join 4PC, when I think it's probably more expensive now. When I joined Rich Livin's high level mastermind, I remember putting money on a credit card to buy a plane ticket to fly to California on short notice to come to an event. So those big investments can be powerful, and they're not a panacea. Just paying a bunch of money to a coach is not going to solve all of your problems as a coach. And so you need to make fearless, bold investments, but you also need to make wise investments. And if you are throwing money at a coach because you think they're going to solve all your problems, that in and of itself is problematic. So, I mean, here's the things I really look for. So one, I really take advice and counsel from the people who I know well. And so if you don't know other coaches well, I would encourage you to go out, connect with other coaches, find the ones that have a lot of integrity, find the ones that are actually creating success, and really ask them, who have you worked with? What have you learned? Ask them for your honest feedback. Be wary of people who are incredibly enthusiastic. So I remember when I first was part of Rich's community, I just raved about the Prosperous Coach, and I raved about the intensives, and I raved about Rich. And Rich is amazing. I definitely recommend people read the book. I definitely recommend, if you feel called to go into the intensive, I think you'll meet a lot of other coaches. There's a lot of value there. It was really inspirational, had a powerful effect on me. But early on, I was just really I had really just drank the Prosperous Coach Kool-Aid, and I was just sort of like, oh, this will solve all of your problems. And I've recommended the book and the intensives and Rich to a lot of people. And for some people, it's really worked. And for some people, it hasn't. Now I've learned to discern, like, okay, I think this, maybe this person would work great with Rich, and maybe this person you'd do better working with Christina Berkeley. This person, you're more sort of Jason Goldberg will encourage you more, or this person, talk to Adam and Bay, and this person maybe the Dojo. I've learned to discern, because I've been coaching for a while and I've worked with some new coaches. I've learned to discern, okay, these types of people work best with these types of coaches. So when someone's like really like just over the top enthusiastic about this is the most amazing thing ever, they're probably still in that honeymoon Kool-Aid phase, which nothing wrong with that. Like, it's great that people get excited about that. And I have had people to do that for the Dojo. And I mean, I love they make the recommendation. Just be careful with that. They may be really right, but it's easy to get caught up in the enthusiasm and imagine that's going to fix everything for you. So listen to their advice. And if they have a lot of enthusiasm, appreciate the enthusiasm, but just, kind of take a step back and make sure you're making a wise choice there. I always really look for coaches that are doing their own work. So I'll ask my coaches, who are your coach? Who are you working with right now? What's your edge? That's a great question to ask. Ask them about what helps people who work with you be successful, and then really ask yourself if you're that kind of person. I mean, of course, one of the challenges is the thing that have people be successful is a willingness to commit and a willingness to be in action. So I think if you're willing to commit and be in action, almost any coach can work for you, because that tends to be the challenge for people. Is people really struggle to commit, and understanding what kind of coaches work well with what kinds of people. A friend of mine, Jacob Sokol, is really great at working with people who are sort of uncertain about their future. I'm just not great at helping people figure out what they want to do. Like I usually generally know what I want to do. I discern it pretty easily. I'm very decisive. So I'm not great with those people. I don't totally have the patience for them. I'm not great at helping that figure that out. Jacob's really great at that. My friend Charlie Gilkey, who's an amazing coach of color who does business coaching, is great with systems, right? And people who have that place, right? I really need to develop the systems in my business. He's really great at figuring that stuff out, really great at honing that and having it be better. So, I mean, he's just an incredible coach for this thing. So understand that different kinds of coaches work well with different kinds of people. And so ask them, who do you and don't you work best with? And if they sort of say everybody or I can help anyone, I would be suspicious of that, right? So be really clear with them. And then just be honest with yourself that if you really commit and show up, you'll get a lot of an investment, but just paying the money is not going to be enough, right? Even if it's a ton of money. In fact, spending a certain amount of money that puts you in a certain situation might actually not help you that much, right? So we need to be able to take a risk and make an investment. I mean, to me, spending $30,000 on coaching now is sort of like, man, that's my baseline. I spend $30,000 every year on coaching. So for me, spending that amount of money is not a problem. And I paid more than that for coaching in a year. But for some people, that's a big investment. So be clear about what your level of investment is, what you want to do, and start there. Okay. So not all investments make a difference. Spending a difference, making that leap of faith like he does, sending the check in, paying his last savings, that's great, but it's not enough. You got to follow through on it and be wise about the investments that you make. Fearlessness, while it's great, isn't enough. Right? He talks about this a lot, and I hear this a lot of people read the Prosperous Coach. Like, I'm just going to serve my clients better than anyone's ever served them before, and I have to be fearless on my questions, and I just got to go for it and just do it. And that's great, and that can be powerful, but fearlessness has its limitations. And especially fearlessness in the face of skill and ability is pretty important. So, like I said before, a lot of coaches have good instincts about how to coach their clients, but they don't go after them. So being willing to like share or guess or take a swing is great. But there can be this way of like, I just got to coach my clients better. And just, and then it typically tends to be this very particular way or specific style of coaching, which is very like peppy and creating possibility. And these are some of the complaints people have about Rich's coaching is sometimes he doesn't coach. He sort of gives advice or sort of offers a model of going forward instead of letting the client kind of create possibility. And, we could argue about whether that's good or bad coaching, but there's an element of like, are you willing to dive in and be effective with people? So fearlessness is great, but you really need to be fearless and discerning about how to improve yourself as a coach, which to me is primarily about the art of deliberate practice, about the art of working yourself as a coach, and understanding your job is not to just like push some big life vision on someone and tell like this, your life is going to be amazing if you do this thing. It's really help the client discern and decide what they want, figure out what's in the way of what they want, and help them close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So that's really what coaching is about. So fearlessness is great, but you have to develop some skill and ability, and you also really have to develop your being, right? People read fearlessness or be fearless in their coaching, they just dive into this like, I have to like ask the big questions and they start to collect these crazy questions to ask them, but their being is all whack and they don't really know how to follow up on them. They get lost. They don't take time really understanding what the client wants. And so fearlessness is great. The ability to coach is really important as you do that. Having said that, most training programs don't actually help you develop your ability as a coach. So I'd recommend a deliberate practice approach where you coach, get feedback, and then coach again. That's what we do in the dojo. You can develop your own kind of process to do that, which is great. So, yeah, I would start there. And getting training can be helpful as well, but being fearless isn't enough. So fearlessness is great. It's a great place to start. It's a good instinct, but it needs to be combined with skill, ability, practice, and a willing to continually master your craft. If you're not doing that, if you're not mastering your craft, if you're not getting feedback from your peers, if you're not working with a coach in your own stuff, if you're not developing and honing your own being, it's not going to be enough just to be fearless. Fearlessness is not enough, right? And can be a bit of a buzzword, a bit of like, this is the thing I'm going to do, just be fearless. So, yeah, I think I said it more times than I probably need to. Fearlessness is great, but fearlessness is not enough. Also important distinction, fearlessness isn't carelessness, So that's the other place we go. We get to be very, coaches I see get very like amped up, very like, this is the thing I'm going to do, but it's not carelessness, not to be careless and just project on your client and take big swings and just tell them what's going on and yell at them when they don't do something and just like, why didn't you do that? And that you're telling yourself stories, and it's not carelessness, is not being a jerk, right? Fearlessness needs to also be paired with skill, and it needs to be paired with heart. This real willingness to care about your clients and take care of them, not take care of them exactly, but to care about them in such a way so that you're offering fearlessness from a place of love, not from a place of fear. And there's a real danger from the prosperous coach approach of just like, I'm just going to do this thing and tell you about it and just push fear on you. So I really recommend you don't do that. Be careful, be full of care, be full of love as you offer yourself fearlessly. All right, last but not least, there's this interesting thing that happens in the book where he talks about being the rarefied air as a coach. This is part of the brilliance of Rich's community, which is sort of selling exclusivity as magic. He sells exclusivity a lot, like it really exists in a lot of his marketing. 4PC is a great example of exclusivity. He really talks about kind of being this special rarefied air. So it's what inspired me, right? I remember I joined 4PC because it's like, oh, we have a person here who coaches people at the White House. I was like, well, I want to be in that part of exclusive group. It can also be a bit of the foil of Rich's community, and sometimes the prosperous coach approach is exclusivity is great, but it can also lead to a bit of arrogance. And it can also lead to this feeling if you're not in that group, if you're not in the rarefied air making 6 figures as a coach or whatever it is, that somehow you're like crap. And yeah, I don't think that's really true. I had this attitude before. At a certain point, I was going to write a book called No More Shitty Coaches. And it was very like exclusive and arrogant of like, oh, I'm a good coach and only good coaches should coach. And my opinion on that has really evolved over the years because I really have started to see, or have chosen to see, that coaches who want to go out and coach, they really want to help people. And so while the book plays on exclusivity as a powerful force, I think we need to be careful as an industry about being exclusive, both for inspiring your clients as well as working and inspiring yourself. So there is only one coach like you, and there will only be one coach like you. And your job is to not be like the quote unquote exclusive coaches that are at a particular level. Your job is to be the best coach you can be to the people you want to coach and the people you're here to serve. And so just to be careful with this idea of exclusivity, there's not some special magic club you get to join if you're a really good coach. Now, I mean, I feel very proud of my coaching. I have a couple of groups of coaches that are very high level that I'm a part of. One started by Adam Bay and Kendra that now includes some more people, Michael Porcelli, Tim McGonkey, we're all on the sort of leadership team of that. And another group I started with Dave Burns, where we do kind of practice and work on our coaching together. So those are exclusive groups in a way. And I'm very clear I have a bar that I want people to get across to get there. But like, I mean, it's cool to be in those rooms and I love having those people as my peers, but it's not like it's a magic trick, right? So those are people and relationships that I curated, and those are people that I connected with and spend time with. But it's not a special club, and I don't have a special gold watch or something or a special handshake that gives me some secret about the universe and makes me better than anybody else. They're just the people I like to spend time with, right? And I like the level of work that they do. And so I think it's worthy, like saying, I want to be the kind of person who can spend time with those people, or there's something I admire about their being. But there can be a bit of like, I want to get into the special club. And it can create this feeling of like, I'm not in the special club, and that's because I'm crap and they're all amazing. And, I spent time with those people and like, they're great, but they have problems. John Wineland's incredible, but like often comes late, right? Adam Quiney's an incredible coach and like sometimes can be a bit cold. I am an amazing coach and I can be dour and lazy. Like we're all human beings, right? So we all have our faults and our challenges. And those don't make, that isn't a problem, right? Like I've never experienced John being late to a program he was running, right? I've never experienced Adam being cold in his writing or when he works with his clients, right? So you get to see the humanity of people in a really beautiful way. And I have my own humanity as well. And but that doesn't mean that humanity is problematic. It helps you just realize that there is no special club. And so while the Prosperous Coach plays in this idea of exclusivity and being a part of this specialized, rarefied group of coaches, and while that's sort of true and can be inspiring, it can also be really limiting. So just be careful with it, and be careful with this idea that you need to get into some special club to be a good coach. I don't think you need to be in a special club. If there is a special club that I want you to be in, it's a club of coaches who really care about their work, who are really invested in themselves as coaches, who are willing to do the practice, and are really here to change the world. Because to me, that's the club I want to be a part of, is coaches who are really committed and have high integrity and really care about mastery and really care about helping their clients, and not necessarily having some particular allegiance to some particular person or way of thinking. And so, yeah, I mean, if that's a special club, then sure, you can join that. But all you have to do to join it is just to have that level of integrity. And I always help coaches that I experience have a high level of integrity and are really committed to their work. Okay, so what do I want you to take away from today? First of all, continue to read The Prosperous Coach. It's a great book. Read Rich's stuff. He's got great stuff he puts out. Read Steve's stuff. He's got a ton of incredible book. I mean, I just can't talk highly enough about these guys. Everyone who I mentioned today is an incredible coach. I have a ton of respect for them. So please don't, this is not a substitute for the book. Read the book. What I want you to take away is, first, invest in yourself, but don't throw money at your problems. So investing in yourself is super important. Getting outside your comfort zone for investment is super important. Be very clear about the difference between getting outside your comfort zone and throwing money at problems. Don't throw money at your problems, right? Make bold investments, but understand that it takes a leap of faith before and after you make that investment. 2, learn to face your fears, learn to be bold. That doesn't mean to be foolish or pushy. Foolish with your clients, foolish with yourself, pushy about your opinions, having to be right about particular things. Really learn to face your fears, but don't think that rushing past your fears or trying to avoid them by taking a bunch of bold, crazy actions is really facing them. Facing your fears is patient, painstaking work. Get a coach to support you in it. Support yourself and to take action. Get into this question of, what can I do? How can I make this work? Being willing to face your fears, but don't be foolish or pushy. And last, real commitment feels different. So when you make a commitment to something, and that commitment may come before or after you declare the commitment. There was a particular point during the No Woman Vision fast that I'm currently on, where I had to take a leap of faith. There was a way I had not done it, and did not come at the beginning, came a couple months in, right? And there's been little points like that where I've had to take those leaps of faith. So you may make a commitment, and that leap of faith, that moment of the commitment where you're at the mailbox with the check, or about to hit, enter on the Venmo, whatever it is, where things will feel really real, that it feels really different. So look for those spots and be willing to make the commitment. But it may not come when you pay your money, and it may not come when you make the commitment to do something. It may come somewhere down the line where you wake up on a Monday morning and all you want to do is watch Netflix, but instead you spend the day calling people. Or you're terrified to invite this person to coaching, and you do, and they say no, and you realize it's okay. So being willing to be with the breakdowns, with the failures, to be willing to identify and take those leaps of faith are super important. So real commitment feels different, and look for it. And then last but not least, all of this requires follow through. So everything in this book, the big difference between the people who I see who read The Prosperous Coach and get the magic from it, and the people who don't, is the people who read it, put it into action. They don't just think fearlessness is great. They begin to go out and practice being fearless, which means a lot, being afraid, right? They don't just go out and practice, connect, invite, create, propose. Or they don't just go out and just say, I'm going to do connect, invite, create, propose, but then don't do anything, right? They go out and practice, connect, they practice, invite, they practice, create, they practice, propose. They practice things over and over again. The commitment, reading the book, the concepts are very inspiring, but they're meaningless if you do not put them into practice and learn from them. If you put them in practice, they're heavily effective. Like a lot of the books in coaching, if you just put them into practice, they really work. But you've got to put them into your practice. Created the Dojo so you can put that into practice. Created Half Day Dojo so you can put it into practice. I'm creating a mastermind to help people put it into practice. You can hire your own coach to put it into practice. So that's my whole thing, is about practice. But no matter what you're working with or what program you're at, put it into practice, stay committed to what you're doing, and follow through on it. That makes a big difference. Stop asking the question, why isn't this working? And start asking the question, what could I be working on? That transition will be huge. So I'm looking for people to coach on Coaching Dojo Live. I think I'm going to keep doing these. These were fun. Maybe a week, maybe two before I do the next one. If you like this, if this is helpful to you, drop a comment below. Tell me which part you found helpful. Like it, share it with people. I'm also going to put it on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, I have a YouTube channel under Samurai Coaching Dojo. And lastly, just thanks for being a coach. Thank you so much for being a coach. I really appreciate it. We need coaches in the world. We need great coaches. We need coaches who are working on getting great. We need bad coaches who don't realize they're bad and will learn that they're bad and start to get better. Thank you for being a coach, because you could do anything in this life. You could work at a gas station. You could be a lawyer. You could be a doctor. And of all the things, you've chosen to be a coach, which is really to choose to care people, to love them, to sit with them in silence, and to allow wisdom to arrive. And it's just an incredible calling if you choose it, and it chooses you. Okay, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, and I will see you on the other side.